Hello and welcome. It is February 1st, 2024 and DJI has just released new firmware updates for the DJI Pocket 3 and the DJI Mic 2. And looking through the release notes, this should be a pretty good update. So let's update these two and see just how good it is. So I've been using the Pocket 3 now for a few months and there really is a lot to like about this camera. However, when I did my initial review of the Pocket 3 back in November, and of course you can check that out on the channel, one of the negatives that I found was the low sound levels, particularly when using the DJI Mic 2 transmitter that comes as part of the Creator Combo Kit. So I was really pleased when I looked through the release notes and I saw that there is a specific update aimed at improving this. But of course, that is not the only update in the new firmware release. And in today's video, what we want to do is take a quick look at what are the updates. We'll look at the update process for both the DJI Pocket 3 and the microphone, and then we'll check it out and see just how good the update is. Now we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to place the chapters up here and also on the timeline so you can skip straight to the sections that you are most interested in. And before we get started, the usual disclaimer, this video is not sponsored or paid for in any way. All of the equipment was purchased with my own money and the opinions are entirely my own. And of course, please, if you get good information out of this video, please give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. So let's get to it. Okay, so before we get into the details of the update, just a quick clarification. In this particular video, what we are focused on are the updates that are relevant to the DJI Pocket 3. That includes also the updates that have been made to the DJI Mic 2 transmitter. Now, in the firmware releases that came out yesterday, there were also updates for the full DJI Mic 2 system, including both the receiver and the transmitters. We are not going to be focusing on those today. As I said, we are just looking at the updates relevant to the DJI Pocket 3. And when we come to do our update process in just a moment, we're going to be doing the update of both the camera and the transmitter as well. So with all that said, let's take a look at what is in the new update. So the first item is a new cancel recording feature. So basically, if you're in the middle of recording a clip and you know that you've just messed up the clip totally, you can hold the record button and it will stop recording and it will discard that particular file. Now, this is going to be very useful if you're anything like me and you mess up a lot during your recordings. By having this feature now, I won't end up with a bunch of bad clips taking up space on my memory card. And also when editing, it will reduce the amount of work having to sort out which are the good clips and which are the bad clips. So this is definitely something I'm looking forward to testing out. The second item now, as I mentioned before, this is the big one for me. They have optimized the gain of the DJI Mic 2 when used together with the DJI Pocket 3. As I mentioned earlier in my initial review of the Pocket 3, this is definitely an area I identified as a weakness, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what improvements DJI has made here. The third one is basically adding flexibility to your backup channel. I guess now you'll be able to adjust the gain of the backup channel, which certainly gives you a lot more flexibility. The fourth one, optimizing control of the joystick during selfie mode. Now, I've certainly been frustrated by this one a few times. With the current firmware, if you're in selfie mode and you move the joystick in a certain direction, the head actually moves in the opposite direction, which can be very frustrating and difficult to get used to. So that's definitely a positive change also. Next one, recovery of the gimbal after disconnecting an OTG connection. Now, I haven't suffered this one myself personally, but my understanding is sometimes when you disconnect the camera from the computer, sometimes the gimbal can get stuck and actually in some cases even overheat. So obviously this is also a very important change. And finally, there are some optimizations of the DJI Mic 2 performance during live streaming. Again, this is not a problem I have seen myself, but I'm sure this will be a welcome update for anybody who does live streaming in combination with the DJI Mic 2. So those are the improvements that DJI has promised us through the updates. So let's go ahead and do the update process on both the camera and the microphone, and then we can check out just how good these updates are. Now, the update process is going to be different for the camera versus the microphone. In order to update the camera, we're going to be connecting it to the DJI Mimo app on my smartphone. And to update the microphone, we're going to be downloading the file onto my computer, transferring it onto the microphone, and then doing the update that way. So let's start out with the DJI Pocket 3 update. Okay, so before we start our firmware update, let's just verify what the current firmware version is. And to do that, I'm going to go into settings, pretty much all the way to the end, and you'll find device info. And here you can see the firmware version is 1.02.06.04. So let's go back out and then start up our DJI Mimo app. We'll connect our device. And here you can see new firmware available. And we simply tap to download. So we are now downloading the new firmware version. As you can see, it's got to 50% now and it's asking to install. So I'm going to go ahead and hit install. And as you can see now, we are installing the firmware on the Pocket 3. Update successful. So now you can see we have successfully completed the update. And as you can see, the Pocket 3 restarts. And we have an updated confirmation on the screen as well. Okay, and if we check in again in our settings. So as you can see, we now have the latest firmware version 1.03.05.02. Okay, so we have updated the camera. The next thing we're going to do is update the transmitter. So we're going to get on the computer and head over to the DJI website. Now the microphone you will find under handheld, and here you'll find DJI Mic, and we're going to go to the DJI Mic 2 page, and at the top over here you'll find downloads. Now don't worry if you didn't follow all of those steps, I will place a link to this exact page also in the video description. Now, after downloads, you will find firmware, and you'll see that there are two different firmware files. As I mentioned earlier, DJI has released updates for not only the Pocket 3, but also the full DJI Mic 2 system, and that includes the receiver and the transmitters. Obviously, today we are just interested in the file for the transmitters, so make sure you get the correct one. So that would be this one here. So all we need to do then is download that file. So I've downloaded my firmware and I've placed my firmware file into a folder called DJI Firmware. You can see here, because I have the full DJI mic system, I have actually downloaded both versions, the receiver and the transmitter. You can see here, this one says Wireless Mic 2 RX, that is for the receiver, and this is Wireless Mic 2 TX, this is for the transmitter. So again, in case you do have both files, make sure you transfer the correct file to the correct device. So now we're going to plug up our transmitter. Now it says you can plug it in with it turned off or on. I'm going to leave it powered off and plug it into my computer. And when I do that, you can see that it appears on my desktop. Now, unless you've customized it previously, this is what it looks like. It appears just like any generic solid-state drive with the name no name. And if we open this up, this is now the onboard memory of my DJI Mic 2 transmitter. You can see there is a folder here with some audio files already in it. But what we're going to do is simply take the firmware file that we just downloaded and we're going to place it into the root. So I'm just going to drag that over here and drop it into the root. It's very fast because of course it's a very small file. Okay, so we are done here. The next thing to do is unplug the transmitter and power it on, and that will complete the firmware update. Okay, so we have copied the firmware onto the DJI Mic 2 transmitter, and now I'm going to power it on. And you can see that it is now alternating green and red, which is the indication that the firmware is updating. And now it is flashing back in its usual blue color, so I assume that our firmware is now updated on the DJI Mic 2 transmitter. Okay, so everything is updated to the newest firmware, and now it's time to check a couple of things out. Now, I'm not going to test every updated feature here. The main thing I want to test is the audio performance when linked between the Pocket 3 and the DJI Mic 2 transmitter. But before we get to that, let's just first check out that new cancel record feature. So previously, before we had this feature, if I am doing some recording, and at some point in the recording I realize that I've messed up, maybe I had a setting wrong, whatever the case may be, and I want to just get out of this one, so I stop the recording. Now at this point I have two choices, right? Now I can wait until I get back to my computer and I can sort through the good and the bad clips, or if I want to take the time now, I can go across to my library and I can delete the file. Okay, but now we have the new cancel recording feature. So once again I'm out recording and I realize that I've messed up, whatever the case may be. So this time what I'm going to do is hold down the record button, and as you see, it now cancels the recording. So what you saw there was a little trash can with a circle going around it, and if I hold the button down long enough to complete the circle, then the recording is cancelled. And if we go over to our library, you'll see there's nothing in there. So obviously we did not save that file. Now, let's say that you change your mind about cancelling the recording. So again, you are recording, and at some point during the recording, you think, okay, so I've messed up, I'm going to cancel this recording. You can hold down the button. As long as you release it before the circle is completed, it will cancel the cancel operation. So you can see it has continued recording in this case. And if I decide at any point, no, this really isn't anything I want, holding down all the way cancels the recording. Okay, and now let's get to the audio testing, and what we're looking to test here is the combination of the Pocket 3 and the DJI Mic 2 transmitter, and we're going to compare that pre-update to post-update and see what difference we hear. Now, prior to the update, whenever I used the Pocket 3 together with the DJI Mic 2 transmitter, I had to set the transmitter gain to +4 in order to get an acceptable volume level on my recording. If I set it any higher than that, it would start to become distorted, but again, if I set it any lower, I would really have to boost that audio in my video editor. So for our before clip, I'm going to play you a clip that I recorded just a few days ago, of course using the old firmware. And in that clip I have the gain set to +4, so here is that first clip. Okay, time to do some testing. Now I have the DJI Mic 2 connected to my DJI Pocket 3, and of course we are recording to the DJI Pocket 3 in 16-bit audio, which will be embedded with the video clip. Start recording. So right now we are recording to the microphone itself. So once I upload these files, I'm going to synchronize them, and then we're simply going to switch back and forth between the two so you can get an idea of the sound quality. Okay, so that was before the firmware update. Now let's play a similar clip recorded now with the new firmware. Okay, so now you are listening to me talking on the DJI Pocket 3 linked up to the DJI Mic 2 with the newest firmware version that was released January 31st, 2024. And this should give you a good idea of any audio enhancement that has come through that firmware update. Now, the previous clip you heard, as I mentioned, was done using a gain of +4, and I left the audio level unchanged in my video editor. On the new version that I'm talking to you on now, I have the gain set at 0, and I will also not make any adjustments to the volume level. So listen to the volume level, but also listen to the overall audio quality and the performance. So what do you think? Have DJI really improved the audio quality here? Well, I would say this is one of the easiest conclusions I've ever made. As I said throughout this video, the big change for me was the improvement of the audio between the Pocket 3 and the DJI Mic 2, and DJI have certainly delivered on that promise. If you go back and you review the before and after clips, the before clip, not only was the volume level very low, but also the voice sounded very shallow and a little echoey. And if you listen to the after clip, after we did the firmware update, the volume level was much better. It will be much easier to work with a clip with this volume level, and the overall quality of the sound was also much better, with the voice sounding much fuller. So clearly I'm very happy with this update just based on that one feature alone, but as a bonus we did get a number of nice new features also added. For me personally, I do think I will make good use of that new cancel recording feature. So that wraps it up for another video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, any comments, if you have any input to give, please go ahead and put that into the comments section. Also remember to give us a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching.